Hey, everybody. Welcome to LettermenRow.com. I am Jeremy Birmingham. That is Spencer Holbrook. We are back for another episode of The List. This is where we, Spencer and I, talk about players that are what we feel, Spencer, are must-gets in the class of 2022 for Ohio State. And I know that term in itself is sort of like a taboo because we're talking about high school juniors right now, and you don't want to put too much pressure on any kid in the country. But in a recruiting cycle that is weirder than any in the history of recruiting, there is a group of guys that are starting to emerge as what I would think is a must-get, because for Ohio State at this juncture, the amount of time and energy they put into only a handful of recruitments around the country prove to me that these players are a different priority level for Ohio State.
Well, in Ohio State is already, 1/3 of the way full in the class, maybe even closer to a halfway full. And so it's getting to that point. It's really weird because usually we have official visits or not officials, but we have visits already and people are really weeding teams out. Can't do that right now. So Ohio State has to kind of do that for the players and weed out who they don't really need to come visit on these officials, who doesn't need to be on campus, because you're not going to be able to have the same volume of people as well. And so when you see guys that we tab as must gets, I think it just kind of allows us to highlight to the wonderful people who listen to our show, who Ohio State really, really is going after and who Ohio State thinks it has a chance to get.
Yeah, and today we are heading to St. Louis. The Buckeyes have done very well in St. Louis in the last handful of years, especially, in the last 4 cycles, they've done well with Jamison Williams, Cameron Babb, Cameron Brown, J.K. Johnson, and now we're talking about another cornerback from St. Louis, Toriano Pride. He's the country's number 14 ranked cornerback, but if you look at his top schools, it's Ohio State, it's Clemson, it's Alabama, it's Georgia. I mean, we're talking about a kid who has offers from the best of the best programs in the country. He has right now set up 2 official visits, one to Ohio State, one to Clemson. And that's enough right there to let you know why this is a pivotal battle for Ohio State, because the Buckeyes are in a recruiting tussle with the Tigers for a number of different players around the country. But at cornerback specifically, you have Toriano Pride, you have Ryan Turner, who visited Ohio State this past week on his own dime. And both of those two have 2 official visits that are they're focusing on for the first 2 weeks of June. And it's Ohio State and Clemson. And I would almost think that we could lump these two together for this one show. But I think that Toriano Pride, because of his aggressiveness, because of the type of football he plays, and Ohio State's success in St. Louis, Spencer, that to me is why he's on the top of this list.
Yeah, anytime you see Ohio State Clemson in a game, in a recruitment, it's going to be one that comes down to the end. And I think that's what you're looking at here. It's going to come down to, after those 2 visits, what happens next? Does he take more visits? Does he decide on a school? This is one of those recruitments that if you're not watching already, you need to put on your radar, because this kid is by 247, who I always think is the reputable of the 3, the 10th best corner in the country. So he's in that top 10 where Ohio State fans always like to see those recruits by the position. This is a guy who's violent. He's physical. He's a good corner. He's good at the point of attack. He's good ball skills. I really like the way he plays. Ohio State Clemson is going to be fun.
Yeah, and I think that what I like the most about Toriano is just the way that he approaches this entire thing. He knows that as the number 14 ranked player in the country at his position, he is not getting like the love that he should be getting based on the offer list he has. But he is not shy. He will tell you that he thinks he is the best cornerback in the country. His coach there at Lutheran North High School in St. Louis has told me very straight up, this kid is a dog. Like, he is a aggressive, full speed ahead, 100 miles an hour, the entire game type of cornerback. And if you go back and you watch him on a recent episode of Bermanology, you can see that he's a kid who fits Ohio State mold off the field as well. Very, well-spoken, very intelligent, a kid that really seems to understand the opportunity he has in front of him. And I think that when you look at the influence that Brian Hartline's had in St. Louis over the last handful of recruiting cycles, the efforts by Matt Barnes and Kerry Combs, the push by Ohio State to make Toriano Pride, who's visited Ohio State 3 or 4 times throughout the last few years, a major priority. I mean, I don't think that there's anything to call him but a must-get in this class.
Yeah, and I think the thing about this class with the corners is if you pair a guy like Toriano Pride with Jaheim Singletary, you can't really do much better than that. I know Ohio State fans were clamoring for the Denver Harrises and the Will Johnsons and those kind of guys. But if you pair those two corners together, you are going to have a successful secondary when these guys become developed and are able to get on the field. Like those two can be the backbone of a defensive recruiting class. And I think that's what makes Toriano Pride such a huge get for Ohio State. And I always look at, I guess, the big picture of it, whereas you are able to talk to these guys more and do that. I just think if you can pair those two together, you have something really special in the secondary.
Well, I think that's a big point you bring up here. If you look at the class of 2022, it is right now a fairly offensively heavy class outside of the linebackers who, you have a good core group there. But at defensive back, you have Jair Brown committed. There has still been questions about Jair Brown and his commitment to the class. And you wonder, if he's going to stay in that mix. I think he will, but you do want to look and see that you have a Jaheim Singletary, an absolute lockdown corner, paired with a kid like Toriano Pride, who to me, and we talked about it on a recent episode of Talking Stuff where you asked me, who's going to be the next edition of the list. And I said Toriano Pride because to me, he has that Damon Arnett type swagger, the Seven Banks type swagger that I think that sometimes you just have to have if you're playing defensive back at that level. And that kind of fit, that kind of personality, that very type A, very in your face, I am the best corner in the country, fits extremely well at a place like Ohio State. And that's why I'm fascinated always, Spencer, by the recruitments that come down to Ohio State and Clemson, because the two environments could not be any different in the way that these kids have to live their life between Ohio State and Clemson. Yeah, there's a lot of similar recruits being targeted by both of them, but man, that is, for a kid from St. Louis, you wonder, does he really want to get away from the city, or is he someone that understands that maybe he needs a change of scenery, or is the life of Columbus and the life of Ohio State something that he wants more? And I think that ultimately could be a major factor in what his decision comes down to.
And that's why I think after these visits, you might have decision time. I don't want to talk for him, or, you have more insight, like I always say, than I do. But after he visits Ohio State and Clemson, he gets home from those visits and he sits down. He may not need to take any more visits, because he may be able to either look and say, I need to get away from the city and go to Clemson. I like the feel there better. Or I really like what Ohio State offers. It's another big city. I can become comfortable there. I like what they're doing there. I think this is a recruitment that could be a two-horse race. And I know that we might be getting a little ahead of ourselves because there's 9 months, I think, until signing day, or I'm not good at math. You know that. However many months until signing day. But I think that this is one of those things where it could just be a two-horse race down to whenever he decides to make a decision.
Yeah, I don't even think that Toriano, from my recent conversations with him, is even hiding that fact. I mean, he is not only visiting Ohio State and Clemson with the first 2 weekends that he's able to make visits, but he's also visiting on the 2 biggest weekends of the recruiting year for both of those two. Ohio State is looking at that June 4th through 6th weekend as the Buckeye Bash 2.0, with every commit in the class expecting to get to campus. And then he's going to be going to Clemson the weekend after for what they're calling their all-in elite retreat or something. So it is going to be the red carpet is going to be laid out in both of those instances. And it's just going to come down to where his personality fits best. And I think that that's what makes these sort of battles with Clemson so interesting. And we've talked, the last 2 years now, it's just Ohio State, Clemson. And more we're starting to see it. And especially at cornerback right now, we saw the Jordan Hancock thing. We've seen Jaheim Singletary. Clemson was on his list. Now I said Ryan Turner. And this issue in the situation with Toriano Pride. To me, I just think that he's a perfect fit for Ohio State. He's not the long cornerback that Kerry Combs generally likes at, just about 5'11" and 175 pounds. But what they really like about him is just the way that he gets after it. He is aggressive. He is a kid that goes, like I said, 100 miles an hour and really fits the Ohio State program. And when you're looking at a roster where you're going to be losing Cameron Brown, where you're going to be losing Seven Banks, you don't really know what else happens with attrition. it's a position of major need for Ohio State in this class. They're going to take at least 3 cornerbacks. And to me, the number 14 ranked cornerback in the country, Toriano Pride, is an absolute must get for Ohio State.
I would agree with that. I think this is a perfect addition to the list. And when you look at the guys that we are setting up for on this list, Ohio State can manage to take care of business on the recruiting trail. You're looking at a very, very special secondary with not just Jaheim Singletary and Toriano Pride, but we already highlighted
Xavier Wampa on the list.
Xavier Wampa, yeah,
right.
He's on the list. And then you look across the ball, you've already got offensive guys everywhere. And then you add in a 5-star tackle to the mix. This class could be very, very special. I know we said that about 2020. We've said that about 2021. But this 2022 class is shaping up to be on a different level altogether.
Yeah, and don't want to take anything away from those classes. Those classes were special. But Ohio State here is in a situation as the country's number 1 class, but they haven't had a commitment. They've had one in the last 3 months, and that was Keon Gray. So, we're building towards what could be a monumental June for Ohio State. The weekend of June 4th through 6th is a weekend that Toriano Pride will be at Ohio State. The Buckeyes' goal that weekend is to make sure that he doesn't end up making a trip to Clemson. And that's why he's on the list, because if the Buckeyes are trying to get you to not visit anywhere else, it's because they know that you're a perfect fit for the program. And that is certainly going to be their aim. The weekend of June 4th for Toriano Pride from Lutheran North High School in St. Louis. He is number 4 on the Lettermen Row list. I'm Jeremy Birmingham. That's Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching.